Hello coaches, welcome back to another Modern Soccer Coach interview. I'm sure you've seen the recent article that was going around about goalkeepers perceiving the world differently. It's now official. Today we are joined by one of the authors from that study, Michael Quinn. He's going to talk about the study, he's going to talk about the future of goalkeeping, and going to talk about where we might be going with neuroscience and coaching and football and some exciting developments that will hopefully take place there. Before you start, please give it a like and a subscribe. Thank you so much. We'll put Michael's article on the link below as well. Thanks so much for your support. Here he is. Enjoy. Michael, thanks so much for joining me on the Modern Soccer Coach podcast. Really excited to have you on.
Cheers, Gary. Thank you very much for having me on. Very excited to get going and get stuck in.
Goalkeeping. First thing I said, well, I wish I could do more goalkeeping stuff. I don't do enough goalkeeping stuff. I saw that there was this article that blew up last week. I thought, oh, that was interesting. I had a quick look at it. And then, lo and behold, I saw the Irish connection. And then, lo and behold, we're connected on LinkedIn. And lo and behold, you came back to me right away. So here we are. I suppose the first question, obviously your goalkeeping connections, and we'll get to some of that in your background. But the idea of looking at the perception and the cognitive aspects of goalkeeping and doing a study around that, where did that start, that process, I suppose?
Yeah, so I suppose the kind of initial part of it was obviously I played in goal. I stopped playing for a while to pursue other things and kind of to attend third level college in Ireland, to attend university. And I kind of made a bit of a comeback, I suppose, at 19, 20-ish, which isn't old, obviously. I didn't think at the time, but I had to relearn a lot of the skills. I couldn't understand why certain things were so difficult for me. Other things were easy on some days. And I was kind of selfishly trying to, using the background I had, the research skills I was kind of getting through DCU, I was trying to kind of find something on goalkeeping, find this kind of elixir, so to speak, that would help me improve my performance and be, the best keeper I could. And there was just nothing there really, which we found shocking. So I said, look, when I get the chance to do a bit of research, I think, least I can do is do it on goalkeepers. And look, I was very lucky when I was given the chance as part of my thesis to kind of, pick and choose what I wanted to do. I was set a task of doing a bit of a literature review on the space on goalkeeping and kind of the neural underpinnings of what's going on and different tests that happen. And there was just nothing really to write about. So we knew kind of there and then this is probably going to be a good one to get stuck into.
Yeah, I mean, like every goalkeeper coach, and I don't think any outfield coach or outfield player would even disagree. It's such a mental position. The psychological elements of it go from, I suppose, the biggest one I think is the bravery just to go and stand there in the first place and then make the mistake and keep in the game and all that stuff. Well, the aspects of what you were measuring, can you give us a little bit of a background into where the study stuff? Because there was, as far as, and again, correct me if I'm wrong here, but there was a control group. There was a group of professional goalkeepers, a group of outfield players, and then there were players that never played. So I suppose if that's correct, how did you measure, or what did you measure throughout that?
Yeah, so we had a group of kind of, in terms of the data we used, we had a group of 20 professional goalkeepers, 20 outfielders, all, by the way, everybody was kind of age appropriate, all between 18 and 40, I think was the cutoff. And then 20 kind of, we'll call them lay people or people who've never played elite sport at any real level. I'll be honest, it was a horrible study to be a participant in. I'd love to say it was really elaborate, and it was a lab, and it was footballs flying everywhere. It was literally sitting in a dark room, listening to beeps and watching a screen flash for 45 minutes. It was torture. A lot of people still haven't spoken to me since, by the way. But it was a tough kind of a study to do, and it was during the height of the pandemic, so it was kind of tricky to recruit at that time. I was lucky, I'd signed for a club. Now it ultimately didn't work out. The league they were playing in was cancelled, but we were doing pre-season through Zoom, so it was great. I was able to kind of get access to all these players. Likewise, when I finished my degree, we were able to gather a few more. When I was playing again in the Irish leagues, I was able to kind of literally coming off the pitch at full time, going, listen, can I have your phone number? I'll ring you during the week. Can you take part in this? So that was how we got the people, I suppose, which is the harder part. In terms of the science behind it, so we were measuring a thing called multi-sensory integration. So that is how your brain integrates sensory information from different sources. So obviously we were doing visual and audio, so what you see and what you hear, and how your brain can kind of, I suppose, manage that and interpret what's happening. And this test, I was just, again, another bit of luck. My supervisor, Dr. David McGovern in DCU, big football fan, which is a bit rare in the field, in truth. He was delighted to do it, but kind of get involved in the project, but also his background, he'd used this test a lot previously. So we knew there'd been nothing really done with professional athletes on this. It had more so been done with kind of like elite musicians, maybe looking at, kind of intellectual disability and neurodegenerative diseases and how this was measured. So it was never really done in this kind of area. So we looked at what the musicians had, and we said, well, look, obviously, they're trained to have exceptional pitch, whatever it might be. And that's why they outperform people who'd never played music before at this task. So we said, maybe with football, cues and goalkeepers having to try and make decisions all the time, and they're constantly trying to read the play, constantly trying to understand. And even in training, you're always making decisions. You're always anticipating what's going to happen, reading body language, understanding when a player is giving you the eyes and they're going to try and roll it in the near post, or, all these different things that you have to do. And we just said, look, maybe there's some chance that goalkeepers have exceptional multisensory processing, and maybe that's it, maybe it isn't. So we did the test. Like I said, we were quite lucky. It was relatively quick getting all the data together. And it showed that goalkeepers have a thing called a narrower temporal binding window. So that is basically, at a certain point, your brain, when signals from, let's say, auditory and visual, something you see and something you hear, happen closer and closer together, there comes a point where your brain just binds it into one. That's just the way it is. Your brain just says, right, that's the same thing, basically, in essence. We made this test, we designed the test for the online version to, get a pretty tight kind of temporal binding window. So really test it out. And it's, everybody kind of has a certain kind of, I suppose, threshold for this. Goalkeepers, and oftentimes we couldn't even get to the end of their range of that. They were just so not fooled by the illusion. They were so sharp in terms of their multisensory integration that, we were kind of thrilled to get the result we did, in truth.
Really, really interesting. It sounds not predictable, but it sounds like you expected, being a goalkeeper yourself, you would expect professional level goalkeeper would be able to get that connection really, really strong. One thing, and I read a few articles, because it's funny, like when you start reading the different news outlets, there's one or two sentences that maybe one have that another doesn't. But the thing I was looking for was, what was the difference between the layman and take the goalkeepers out? Was there a difference between the layman and the outfield players?
There was indeed. So kind of tiering it in performance. So goalkeepers were above and beyond the most impressive in terms of their performance. Outfield professional athletes were second, and professional footballers rather were second, and then laymen, as we're calling them, were third. They had the widest temporal binding window, so they fell for the illusion constantly at a much kind of slower pace, we'll say. But again, it kind of stands to reason. And look, our research doesn't say necessarily why this happened. We have our own theories on it. Ours just shows there is a difference, and I think it stands to reason. Professional footballers, no matter where you play on the pitch, with a lot of decisions to make, you're always kind of trying to read the play, anticipate what's going to happen. Like we said about goalkeepers, just trying to, give yourself best chance to make an impact on a game. So, we were kind of thrilled to see the outfielders obviously perform that a little bit better too.
Yeah. So what's the process of? All right. So say you've done the study, you've got the results. It's kind of shaped up how you would have liked it to. You've got the clear differences between them. You've got the goalkeepers top and everyone. What's the next step then? Again, the world, is it going to a publication, or do you go to the media, or how do you get eyes on this?
Yeah, so I suppose the next step at the time was just to get the rest of my exams passed and get out of my undergrad. That was all that was on my mind at the time, so I can go off and focus on my football. But once that was done, look, we knew we had a pretty striking result. We knew, this is potentially something people will be interested in. We finished up. We recognized, in order to get published, I think we had to get 5 more participants in each group. We did it with 15 originally, so I had to get 5 more, which thankfully I was playing football at the time, so I was able to recruit pretty quickly on that. It wasn't an issue. But then, this research would have started in December 2020, and we probably would have finished data collection at the end of 2021. kind of October, November 2021, I think is when we were finishing up. And in the meantime, it was literally just right sizing it for these academic journals, which, look, they have their reason for doing so. We had to, first of all, think, kind of all put our heads together, myself, David, and Rebecca, my co-authors, and we had to say, right, well, where will this fit, and what piece, how do we frame it best? So we approached current biology. They were our first choice. In truth, even when we spoke about it a year while we were recording it, we were getting some of the results coming through, going, we might have something. They were our first choice, and conveniently, they made us work for it. There's a lot of changing things and rewriting and restructuring and kind of defending ourselves quite a lot. And I have to thank David McGovern for, he's the real brains behind him, and Rebecca, I suppose, were the real brains behind it all, in terms of kind of navigating that. But yeah, we did a press release, and it went live last Monday, obviously, as we're recording this today. And we maybe anticipated a bit of local coverage, or maybe the football community might find it interesting. But yeah, I mean, it's blown up, to put it nicely. It's been a bit surreal, in truth.
It's fascinating, because I think there's two big things. The one is the goalkeeper communities, or people outside the goalkeeping community, who are saying, I told you. Goalkeepers are saying, I told you we're special. And then the people outside that are saying, we told you you're weird. So there's that there part. But then there's also the part of, and this is one of the questions I want to ask you, there's the part on the training aspect of it. So and you see this a lot today, and there's a little bit of a debate on social media over, transfer of, you see the lasers or the tennis rackets and all that there. And I wanted to kind of go a little bit deeper then with your, I know this isn't as much evidence-based, but just your opinions as a goalkeeper and an expert in the field. But when you're looking at this and you're getting a clear difference between an elite goalkeeper, then is there an argument to be made for the benefits of training that is visual auditory? Is that the correct term?
Yeah. I mean, that kind of, I suppose, yeah, the implementation of neuroscientific methodology, kind of evidence-based principles on that, that kind of psychophysical work, so to speak. Yeah, I definitely think so. And again, this is not what the research said. I'm giving you purely my kind of opinion and my background. So the reason we did the study, in truth, was to learn a bit more. Yeah, I mean, 100%. I know, even prior to obviously starting the pod, we were chatting offline or off air about it. There are companies out there already who are starting to scratch the surface on this. I know of one championship club at the moment who, in the last couple of years, have massively outperformed expectation, using a system that does exactly this. Now, they can make it context relevant, we'll say, because you can't actually play football in there, but they have a very interesting companies sprouting up and some really cool science behind it. So I definitely think there's a role for that. In terms of the issue we have, I suppose, is, look, the bad actors in the space. You have these brain training games that came out 15 years ago that told everybody they won't get dementia, they won't get Alzheimer's, they're going to get an IQ of 200. Like, it was just crazy stuff that kind of went on. And look, that was part of the learning too. I'm not saying all that was bad, but I think it left a bit of a sour taste in people's mouths. Obviously, then, if you're talking in kind of football training world, I know in the goalkeeping world, the whole TikTok influencer space, there's been some crazy things. You see people jumping out the back of cars, catching balls, and diving through, tires that are on fire. And there might be some practical elements. I think, look, maybe as you were saying, that bravery piece earlier, showing the craziness of it all, the weirdness of it all. But yeah, I can say from my own background, I think for a goalkeeping perspective, we're talking strictly goalkeeping, anything that's improving that hand-eye coordination, that kind of proprioception there, using heavier balls, lighter balls that travel much quicker, practicing with these ones that swerve all over the place, which I know feels like every year Nike, Adidas, all the rest of them do everything they can to make life as hard as they can for goalkeepers. But I'm a big believer in this kind of, trying different things, trialing different ideas. So, whether it's, like we said, I think we were chatting earlier saying about tennis balls, ping pong balls, even playing other sports, I think the skills carry over nicely. And as well, another point is, as a goalkeeper, it's nice to get a bit of variation in routine. It's oftentimes in your training, you're doing 10 volleys, 10 dips, 10 half volleys. So when you kind of mix it up a bit, I feel like, even the excitement of it alone can be a great boost.
Well, yeah, in a professional environment, and you're out probably 30 to 45 minutes, goalkeeping today is such a refined training regime that, yeah, you're doing the same thing every day. That can get old real quick. Whenever you're looking at saying, like, all right, so the visual part of it, and again, you're saying that the space is starting to get filled with that there, and even VR coming in and saying like, all right, well, which I've tested some of this stuff, and it is lab. I was impacted by it. I thought, wow, this could really help a player. I remember a few years ago, no, I was about 20 years ago, I did a coaching license in Belfast. Chris Coleman was on. He was doing a demo, and he was doing it. He had a defender facing away with a mannequin behind him, and a person that was chipping a ball into the mannequin, so the defender couldn't see it, and you would go on the sound of the ball rather than the typical traditional go, turn. And I just thought, wow, that's really, really interesting. Makes you focus a little bit more. Never seen it until like this made me think of it. If it's not 20 years ago, it's 18, 19. But the question I wanted to ask was, is that auditory? Is that something that, you're talking about visual auditory development, but even the auditory alone, is there a value in being able to listen better?
I think there is. I think, look, if you talk, I'll go back to that in a second, but if you talk, let's say, another sport, golf, for example, an elite level golfer can tell a flush, really crisp golf shot from maybe a thinly struck one, or maybe one hit out the toe of the club, purely by the noise they can tell. So much of golf, the feel of hitting a ball is the auditory feedback they get. It's incredible. There's a lot of kind of cool research on that. Going back to the football side, I think that's actually better again than someone shouting go. Understanding, I suppose, without knowing the drill, if they were trying to anticipate where that ball might be, if it was being clipped over the top, or if it was hitting the mat, whatever it might be, they are, without being fully conscious of it, probably registering, right, well, that one was flush on the laces, that's going to carry an extra 5 yards, I'm going to cover that, I'm going to go a bit quicker, or that sounded like he kind of scuffed his studs as he kicked that might come up a little shorter, actually, I might have time to turn and face it and then drop off. It's, in terms of kind of goalkeepers, I can put it back to, there's massive value in it. Like, it's incredible how, particularly with the miss-hit shots, I feel like a lot of goalkeeping service, it's perfect. The goalkeeper coaches all strike the ball lovely. It comes at you very clean. It flies through. It comes into your hands. But it can be horrible when you have, somebody who kind of shins one a little bit and it's dipping all over the place and it's moving. It's very easy for you to recognize the one that struck well because this is coming at me fast, and I can say. But these kind of unusual outlier ones, of these slow balls that catch you out, I know baseball is something similar. If we can get used to the noise of those things, I do think there's value there, even if we don't consciously process it and go, right, I've heard that, so it's this. I just think, our capability to react and integrate that info is far beyond what we're given credit for.
Crazy. Because I look at the goalkeeper space, right, and I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about this, and you'll see that when I ask this question. But when I look at it, and I do have an appreciation for I've seen it up close. Like I've seen periodization plans, I've seen the analysis side, I've seen the daily training, and it's spot. It does not get the credit it deserves in the coaching community about how advanced the goalkeeping preparation and positional specific work they're doing is. But I look at it and I think, like, how much more percent can you get out of that there? Like, is there, that's got to be close to be, you think there is? You think there's a big...
I definitely do. Yeah. Sorry for cutting across. It's kind of something I'm passionate about, so I've got a lot to say on it. But yeah, I definitely think there is. I think it's been incredible to see the advancement, even in the last 10 years. You can see the strides that have been taken. It's been incredible. Yeah, nothing but positive things to say on that side of it. But we have, like we were saying previously, this whole idea that 20, 30 years ago, statistics became this huge part of sports, Billy Bean, the Oakland days, and this incredible story that, clubs like Brentford, whose entire model is based off it. And it's amazing, the kind of utility clubs. I don't know of any top level clubs that aren't taking advantage of those kind of statistical models and what they can learn from it. Do think, like anything, there comes a point where it's not redundant, but it becomes a point where, everyone's doing it. So where is the real competitive advantage? It's only not doing it that you fall behind. Talking about what the next thing to kind of move the needle on that and why I would have got into the area I have is, personally, I believe it will be understanding the neural kind of underpinnings of performance, basically. So what's going on neurally that's making us play better? How are we making those decisions? How does Lionel Messi keeps scoring these wonder goals? How does Manuel Neuer judge that ball over the top so well? Why is it that maybe a certain keeper who on paper looks fantastic is having a really tough time at the moment? And he's training the exact same. And why can we we don't seem to think it's a confidence issue. Why does it seem that he keeps getting unlucky or he keeps making the wrong decision? I just think there's so much more there. And yeah, personally, I think there's a lot more juice to squeeze on it. Obviously, the game's always changing too. I'm sure as goalkeepers start to get a handle on it and start to improve, well, FIFA will probably change another rule. But it's neither here nor there. But yeah, I think, and that's just in goalkeeping. I think for outfield players too, yeah, I think there's plenty more kind of digging to do here.
Hello coaches, you asked and we delivered. One of the most popular requests we get on this channel is passing warm-ups, and it's not the regular slow way to be passing exercises. No, what coaches are looking for is the one-touch intricate combination type exercises with that emphasis on quality, technique and tempo. So we have decided to put 30 of these exercises together and release them on an ebook that you can get access to right away. If you're a youth coach who's looking for some extra technical work, or you're even a college coach or a club coach working with older players looking for some warm-up exercises or some pictures to align with your tactical objectives, we can help you out. Our new ebook, 30 passing practices, is available on the link below. It's a PowerPoint that includes video, session details, and coaching points on each slide. Tons of ideas, tons of different pictures, lots of adaptions. You can get it on the link below or at modernsoccercoach.com/shop. Thanks for the support and enjoy.
Yeah, it brings us along nicely then. Where does, when the study is the beeps, which I would associate with reaction times, where does that kind of start to expand? Maybe you might have already answered this already with the auditory aspect of it. Where does this expand then to you're saying then decisions and perception and maybe anticipation and all those areas?
Yeah, so our study, we didn't strictly measure reactions time. It's something I want to kind of get across. So the reaction time will be obviously your ability to do something in response to a stimulus and how long it took you. People weren't timed in their responses to say, basically, to give anybody who didn't see the test a quick overview. Like I said, sitting in a dark room, staring at a screen, hating the fact that you said yes to doing something I asked probably the week before. You were literally presented with a stimulus. So it was either one or two flashes paired with either one or two beeps. And the synchronous one, which is where it's all, there's no illusion, is one flash happens paired with a beep at the same time, or two flashes happen paired with two beeps. Very easy. Very few people make mistakes in that one unless they're getting bored maybe. But the flip one is when we make it asynchronous. So when we pair one beep with two flashes, or maybe two beeps and one flash, that's when your brain starts playing tricks on you. We weren't being like fastest finger on the buzzer, you have to, who's going to be quick. People were basically, there was a cue which was like across in the middle of the screen that they were staring at. This happened, and then the screen would say how many flashes did you see, one or two, and you had, as long as you liked answers. Essentially, look, when the flash, obviously the timing, the distance between, in terms of, look, if you had a flash, then a beep, if you had a beep, a second later there's a flash, and a second later there's another beep, it's not going to trick you. But if you had those beeps happen really close together, either side of the flash or paired with the flash, that's when it starts to trick people. So again, I've probably made a bit of a dog's dinner explaining that, kind of gone blue in the face at this stage from the kind of trying to explain it properly. I hope I've got across how awful it was to do it, by the way. But yeah, we didn't strictly measure that reaction time. Like I said, that piece wasn't necessarily there. Do I think goalkeepers also have superior reaction times? Totally biased. Yeah, I do. Totally in my own subjective experience. And as you were saying earlier, goalkeepers saying we're all special. We told you all. Yeah, that big ego part of me definitely says so. But yeah, look, in terms of the decision-making aspect then, look, if we can, without giving too much away, in terms of the decision-making, there's obviously a neural process that kind of underlies that, we'll say. And the more efficient that process is, the better, the quicker we can make a decision, or the quicker that we're able to make a decision, the better decisions we can really make. And there's a lot of stuff we go into here about cues, and like if we talk penalties, for example, guessing the right way, the most accurate giveaway for where someone's going to put a penalty happens right before they kick it. So if you think of the whole run up and before someone kicks it, centre forward is staring to his right. Well, that doesn't mean he's going to go to his right, does it? He might not. He might be giving the eyes. Probably not that accurate. He starts running up and angling his body a certain way. There might be 25% chance that's a giveaway. Probably not. But these split seconds before he plants his foot to strike the ball, the direction of the foot plant, everything else, that is what kind of gives it away. That's the most reliable cue, and that's been studied. It's a brilliant kind of piece of research if anyone has time to look it up. But the problem with that is we don't consciously know as a goalkeeper that's actually what we're watching. We're just going by what comes into our head. Obviously now you've got the likes of Pickford with people penalty plays in the back. That's a whole other thing. But in terms of, let's say, you know, an amateur game, you don't know the guy. A goalkeeper making that decision doesn't really know what's actually informing it. But if we had a way of, I suppose, measuring it, understanding it, and then, you know, kind of being able to see, right, well, maybe this goalkeeper decision-making process isn't quite where it needs to be yet. How can we train that? How can we get it better? Because maybe physically and technically he's superb. And this is the last little kind of bit that could get him over the line to having a big career. That's where the further research comes. Obviously, there's the ideas about frame rate then. So we always heard about, I'll go back to Lionel Messi, how the game happens in slow motion around him. Like the way your monitor or your computer screen has a frame rate, so do we, so do our brains, and what we can process and how quickly we can do it. I personally believe we can measure, like it is measurable, and I believe that we can use that to kind of inform training protocols. So we know the day before a game, well, if we do this five-a-side in this really tight little indoor pitch in this corner of it, and you know there's a rondo with 20 players involved and it's frantic and this ball's been going everywhere, does that kind of increase frame rate? Does that help? Kind of very subjective experience that could be, and maybe some younger players can kind of can relate to this. I know I can from my own experience, was when you go up and train with the older team before your own team trained, and you would train, maybe they were stuck for players, you got called into the first team, and it was just a million miles an hour. There's bodies everywhere, there's balls, everyone's touch is quick. The second you take a touch, someone's on you. And then an hour later, you go and train with your own teammates, and you know, you could read a book while playing at that stage. You're just, you know, everything's so much slower. I again think that's trainable. I think it's measurable. I think at the moment we're getting an understanding of it, but there's just so much more to go on that. Apologies, I don't think I've answered your question there, but rant over.
No, it's we're going into and this is an area that I want to actually get into, which is the accumulation maybe of decision making. Where, I mean, every football is a decision making sport now, tactically, in all positions, I would say. But even I would say for a goalkeeper, seeing it from an analytical standpoint, a defender or a midfielder, from a defensive aspect, it's usually zonal or it's man to man. But the goalkeeper has the distances, the moment, the reflexes, and the margins are way thinner, so the pressure is higher. The only real time I see that goalkeeper being off the clock is when the ball's honestly like a set piece at the other end. Anything else, the ball, it's managing some part of the game. So should we be, or you know, we talked a little bit about this before about psychological load. Should we be a bit more aware, or are we? Is that something that's just going to take research, do you think?
I think so. Look, I think we were obviously chatting off air about certain things and the psychological load and how that can impact performance. I think so. I think, look, the stress of playing into goal, I'd love to see kind of cortisol levels. I'd have dread to think what my whoop would have come up with if I had one at the time when I was playing. It would have been, but like anybody can relate if they've played in kind of a high intensity game, and you know maybe it's an evening time, they don't sleep till 2, 3, 4 a.m. afterwards because adrenaline and everything else. You know, even goalkeepers who present very coolly on the pitch, I'm sure they're still having, you know, internally they're screaming almost at times. They need a lot of pressure, and some people really enjoy that, some people don't. But yeah, I definitely think goalkeeping, look, physically there is quite a load to it as well. Maybe not on game day, the mileage covered isn't quite the same. Training during the week can be tough on your body. If you ask any experienced keeper to have a look at his hands, that'll show you that, you know, their fingers are always pointing east and west. But I definitely think that psychological load piece, you know, I think we made the point that, you know, obviously we're chatting off air, but you said the goalkeepers seem to receive a lot of info during the week, and then come game day, then doesn't really say to them. It's rare a goalkeeper comes sprints on the pitch and says, you need to do this, start kicking it there. Half time, you might get some feedback. So yeah, I do see that changing, hopefully. I know Arteta recently came out and said he thought about subbing off goalkeepers, and I personally do actually think that will be a thing quite soon.
Do you really?
I genuinely do, yeah. I think if you look at, you know, kind of special teams players in the NFL, for example, or, you know, how you can make tactical switches. Like if you're, I think it was the Ben Foster podcast, kind of did something similar during the week where they were saying, if you have a goalkeeper who's 6 foot tall, brilliant, rapid, plays out from the back really well, and then you're 1-0 up, 20 minutes to go, and they bring on Rory Delap and Peter Crouch, or my old man even, and they're just going to be putting balls under the crossbar, and you have Nick Pope sitting on the bench. I think it makes sense to bring on Nick Pope. You know what I mean? He's going to come out and claim it, and he's going to give you a better chance. I'm not saying every single game should happen, but I do think that's probably where it's heading. Could be proven wrong. Could well be proven wrong on that. Might just be another mad goalkeeping experiment.
I actually thought he was just kind of winding up some people, because I think it would just be chaos, Michael. So, for example, if we talk about psychological load, the stress that, in the sense that the example you just used, I get that, like different threat. But in terms of, okay, well, hey, Michael's dropped a couple there, he's looking a bit shaky. Like, if it goes that direction, could be great entertainment, mind you.
Yeah, I think, look, the other side of it is, though, if you'd have asked a goalkeeper 20 years ago to do what Ederson does now, there's no chance. And then you've just landed on them and say, right, we're doing this, and this is how it's going to be. They're going to go, no, absolutely not. I'm going to have a heart attack. I can't handle this. Like, whereas I think it's a case that if kids are brought up doing this, and if it's part of the development pattern that we know, right, well, we're going to rotate goalkeepers, we're not going to have a 1 and 2 structure anymore, and certain games we're going to make changes during the game. I do think there's potential there. Again, could be total waffle, could be way off the mark. I kind of do see where you're coming from about the craziness thing, but I do personally, looking ahead, it is something that I would like to at least see trials for the entertainment value alone. I think it would be brilliant. But yeah, just going back to what you're saying about the psychological load on goalkeepers, I think that does need to be measured. I think it definitely does. I think the recovery days, everything else are great physically for everybody. It's very rare your goalkeeper's in agony the next day after a game that's full of lactic acid and all that kind of thing. You might have some, tight hips or something from kicking balls, but it's more the psychological load. And I do think there should be things put in place to help cope with that, really. The same way you've workplace well-being and other jobs, people are kind of given their space and given time to do other stuff aside from it. I think in high stress positions like goalkeeping, that should be kind of something that's looked at and definitely researched.
Yeah, I actually read Les Seeley's book a few weeks ago. You would be too young to remember Les Seeley, I bet you. He was Man United, like a backup to Schmeichel, early Schmeichel. But your dad would have played against him 100 times. He would have been late 80s, early 90s. But he won the FA Cup. It was Ferguson's biggest call. I was actually at the first game, 10 years of age, FA Cup final, 1990. I was there, and Jim Leighton was the goalkeeper, had a howler, 3-3 Palace replay. Ferguson dropped his goalkeeper to play Les Seeley. I think he played 1 game that year, but it was his loan was expiring the week before it. There's a whole story to it. But it's the different personalities of the different goalkeepers. He knew Leighton would have been rattled by, conceding and crosses and a big physical team. He knew Seeley didn't care. So, and I'm reading it from a coaching perspective, thinking, sometimes it's a different mindset where someone doesn't care about something, but actually suits a type of context. And I think that's the thing with goalkeeping, where it's becoming really interesting. Where are we moving away from the crazy goalkeeper, that the Gravelars again from the yesterday and the Higitas, and are we moving now towards, they're so sensible, Michael. These guys are so level-headed. But that's the decisions that have to be. There's way more to the game now. But I wonder, is that shaping a personality, or am I way off on this?
No, I'd agree in truth, in parts. And I do think, the more data we have and the more kind of understanding we get around the position, the less guesswork it is and the less unnecessary risks are taken, or, I definitely think that's a factor in it. I think to talk about a coach who's done a phenomenal job bringing through goalkeepers, if we're talking about this calm, level-headed kind of, clinical approach almost, there's a guy called Mark Prudhoe at Sunderland. He's brought through Jordan Pickford, he's got Anthony Patterson at Sunderland at the moment. There's more coming through. That's only named a few, by the way. He's worked with, I think, something like 6 England number ones. But his big thing is this kind of like relaxed, laid back, I know Pickford doesn't seem laid back, but like this kind of social element, people become real strong characters. Anyone who's played under him for a period, they always go on to do very well. And I definitely think there's something in that. this whole goalkeepers are mad thing. I still think there's an element of it. Like, I don't know, I can't say what made me go on goal. I kind of dread to study it in truth. I don't really want to know, I don't think. But yeah, you're there to be shot at, and it's, you know, there is something kind of unusual about the people who get attracted to the position, as we've alluded to earlier. In terms of kind of moving forward and getting this more, you know, sensible approach to goalkeeping, I think it's there, but I also just think it's, like we said, you're more informed now. You know kind of exactly what's asked of you. You're getting the reps you need during the week. I still think there is a bit of room for the madness, and I hope it doesn't die out totally. I'd hate to see, you know, the boring goalkeepers kind of club being a thing, but yeah, I do think that's the way it's probably headed. But again, you look in the Premier League, you've got Aaron Ramsdale, who's, you know, big, boisterous character, who seems to be doing well, but you know, it is, I think in football in general, I think character probably is going out of the game.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, just generally it is, isn't it? Yeah, for a number of reasons, society, blah, blah, blah. When you're, I looked at some of your LinkedIn posts last night. You shared something, and it was a long time ago. It was about that you worked with a modern goalkeeper, or like a methodology for young goalkeeper. And I was like, oh, this is great, because you know, a lot of what we're talking about today is you mentioned data and higher level and the science, and you know, we're going to get there. But you're looking at a goalkeeper who's taking a 12-year-old on a Sunday morning and doesn't have the information to get all this, and doesn't have even video. Like, what are some things that you think, you know, again, knowing now with your experience and your research, do you think that are important, I suppose, psychological underpinnings of that development age group?
I think you can't have a culture where results come first, and you can't have a culture where it's, let's just minimize mistakes. Don't go beat your near post. Don't come for a cross if you don't think you can get there. You know, that has to go. Kick it long every time. Kick it over everyone's head. It's not your fault. I can say I was forced to play at some great clubs when I was younger. There was some that weren't so great. Some coaches that, you know, at 12 years of age, you're going, oh my God, a coach can lose his job if, you know, and the reality is the principal in the local school. Like, it's crazy, but like, people get so wrapped up, and it's a fantastic part of the game, why we all love it. But I think at that age, you have to be able to make mistakes, and it has to almost be laughed at. Almost, you have to find a coping mechanism. Mine, as I got older, and sadly, you know, well, not sadly, it was kind of grateful it didn't necessarily work out or get to the level I wanted to, but it was just to have a laugh, just without obviously doing it in front of people and they think that I was throwing it in, and just, you know, but it was just to go, oh, Mikey, come on, how have you done that? How have you let that one in? Or why did you think you'd get that cross? I'm just laughing about, right, it's over now, carry on, like, let's see what we can do. And staying out of that real high arousal, screaming, kicking goalposts, and, you know, all the kind of self-destructive stuff that comes in. I just think that environment. Another thing, I think this is probably something for more soccer parents than anything else in the US particularly, and obviously in Ireland, is the game doesn't have to be analysed to death after a match straight away. You know, your son or daughter gets in the car after making a mistake as a goalkeeper. They know they've made that mistake. You don't need to get them in the car and tell them everything they did wrong and what they could have done. Go off, do whatever the rest of your day looks like, and if they bring it up at dinner, then you can talk about it. And then obviously, yeah, as a goalkeeper, like, don't be afraid to, you know, say it. Like, look, lads, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I am trying here, and I'm going to keep making mistakes, but ultimately that's how you get better. Yeah, they're definitely just things. And we're talking on the negative side. The other side, in terms of, like, you know, real practical, tangible stuff we can do. I was lucky. I didn't get siloed into playing one sport at an early age. I got to play a lot of different things, whether it was Gaelic football, golf, rugby, whatever it might be. And they all kind of stood to me. And what we were talking about earlier, those kind of, you know, out of context trainings, those kind of learnings that carry across, couldn't advocate for that more. Really do think that as a young athlete, it's one of the best things you can do.
Only my son's 7 years old, and he's just getting into football, and he's like, as soon as this is over, he's like, Dad, will you come and kick some shots at me as a goalkeeper? So I'm going to do all the things you said not to do, so that he doesn't become a goalkeeper. Let's talk about the Gelic training. I mean, it's a sport that I'm fairly familiar with, being from Tyrone, and understanding the advances there in Gaelic and rugby in terms of the comparisons of the environment. I mean, what are some things that Gaelic are doing that soccer isn't?
Yeah, I think Gaelic, if we're talking higher level, higher picture, I think, you know, it's got to a point now where it's a little slower in truth, like we were saying about football, you know, and it's, people understand systems and they have their kind of models that they stick to and patterns of play, whatever it might be. Slowed the game down a little in some ways. I think, obviously, look, Gaelic footballers now, they're like very lean rugby players. In truth, they're just, obviously the game isn't as long, they don't cover as much ground, but they're just, you know, colossal specimens with serious physical kind of capabilities. So that's kind of one side of it. You know, I do think the physical side of it, they are, you know, the uptake is huge. In terms of, we're looking at kind of strictly goalkeeping and the crossover from what I've been dealing with, very different positions. I would say Gaelic football goalkeeper, at times they're a quarterback, so at the restart from a goal kick, for anyone who doesn't know, it's sort of like a contested kick out. But everybody's man marked out the field all the way down to the other goal. So you have to, with movement, and you have to try and flight passes, and, you know, oftentimes in not great goal mouths and crosswinds, and football is a little bit heavier than a soccer ball. It's like an old leather ball. So the kind of skill and the ability to recognize, you know, cover defenses you guys have in the you know, the NFL, and recognize they go on zonal, is it man to man, is that, you know, that midfielder, that receiver, the ball, is he having, you know, does he have a massive advantage over the guy picking him up? There's a lot to it on that side, which is why I was hopeful when I went back to football it was going to make me a better keeper. Sadly, it wasn't the case. I didn't have to take a first touch for 2 years, so that kind of killed me. Every second touch was a tackle or a clearance. But yeah, I think that's one side of it. I do think it's a lot more of that throwback goalkeeper. There's a lot of high balls putting on top of you. There's no protection for goalkeepers. You're an outfield player as such. You just happens to wear different jerseys. So a lot more physical contact. It's a lot slower. I will say that. But the ball, it travels harder, if that makes sense. When it hits you, it leaves a mark. So yeah, that's kind of the differences there. There's a lot of, obviously, the Irish goalkeeping contingent. You know, you look back on Shay Given, all the ones back through the years who would have played Gaelic football growing up, and I do think there's something in that. And likewise, I know in the US, there's that stuff about a lot of the kind of basketball playing guys who've done very well in goalkeeping and the hand-eye coordination sports. Yeah, the Gaelic environment is interesting. I was lucky, I've been able to coach the last 3 years with the Kildare under-20 goalkeepers in Gaelic football, which was, you know, a great experience. You're getting guys at 17, 18, 19 years of age, and kind of real forms of time, leaving, you know, secondary school or high school, you know, going on to do maybe college. Some were doing apprenticeships, some were figuring it out. And it was brilliant, really great time. And luckily, we won an All-Ireland medal this year to kind of see it off. So it was a great kind of gone out on a high. It was brilliant. But even in that, you talk about the kind of coaching of it. It still is very much a case of, like the point you made earlier, right? You're the goalkeeping coach. You guys go right down that corner of the pitch, and we'll blow a whistle when we need, just jump and go for some penalties at the end, kind of thing. And it is that still a little bit behind in that way. But one thing I will say that Gaelic football does far better than football, and, you know, go on record saying this, is they push you to do, obviously the fact it's an amateur sport, they really push the development away from the game, and that was great for our goalkeepers this year. You know, we were able to go out and do different things. Maybe after training, it wasn't frowned upon for us to go and have a coffee at the local shopping centre and chill out for a few hours and, like, be mates away from it. And then we got to work. It was work. A lot of them would have done maybe like going to the beach after training together and that kind of bonding thing, which I think football is losing out on a bit. Also, you know, helping guys out. Like, you know, some of them maybe were doing exams and subjects that I'd done. We could all kind of link in. I think that community element and that kind of understanding, this is one part of our lives. We all have this separate idea. Probably isn't quite there in football. Obviously, the professional elite environment is different, but just even at underage youth soccer, elite academies, I think there could be more done on that, definitely.
You mentioned, or no, you didn't mention, you said it in one of the articles I read, that it was like, this is the start, the next, you might look at some different positions or different aspects of the game. Have you got it sounds like you want a bit of a break before you get back into another study, but have you any ideas?
Yeah, we're looking at a few projects. There's kind of applications. Obviously, I won't be the lead researcher on a lot of it. I still want to stay involved. It's a great team that we kind of have, and myself, David, Rebecca, and potentially one or two others might be joining up, which would be fantastic. Yeah, I suppose we're going to kind of we're taking our time. We don't want to rush into a project, because obviously it's someone doing their PhD on this, hopefully, will be kind of the long-term plan. And I can safely say it won't be me for the foreseeable. I do not want to go back into academia for a long, long time. I will, I'm sure, at some stage. But yeah, that's kind of the next step, is kind of identifying a candidate, figuring out what exact kind of area you want to look at. I think youth soccer is going to be the next step, really, kind of studying the development. So our study was great for telling us that goalkeepers sense things differently and perceive the world differently. It was great, kind of cool headline, so to speak. Why that actually was, well, I've spent most of the day talking about why I thought it was. We don't have clear just say like objective proof of what that is. So I think we need that nature versus nurture debate. Is this just goalkeepers naturally have this better temporal binding and they end up playing in goal, or is it the opposite, which is what I believe, that through years and years of training and doing all the things that make them, you know, good goalkeepers, it's kind of sharpened them to be better at this. I also think, in truth, something that we kind of was just a convenience thing, but there was no women's football players involved in our study, just purely because it was so hard to get participants at that time. I just went my own network. The next step will also be to involve the women's game, to have a look at that, maybe different changes you'd see. Yeah, I think there's plenty more to be done here. Obviously, I'll always kind of, you know, fly the flag for goalkeepers, and I'll want to include them in anything we do. But I think, you know, there's probably a bigger picture here in terms of processing in general, and, you know, visual, auditory, whatever it might be, the decision-making parts, the frame rates, whatever that might look like. I think there's quite a lot of work to be done there.
Yeah, it's actually a nice way to finish it, because when and we spoke a little bit about this before, about the psychology aspect, and something that I find today that when a bit of research comes out about something that maybe puts a certain aspect in light, the psychologists are all like, "Ha, told you, you need us here," you know. And it's like, all right, now we need to hire 100 sports psychologists. But I think you've done a really, really good job in actually detailing that there's so many elements to this here, right? Like you have there's a psych side, and there's a neuroscience side, and there's also an understanding context of goalkeeping, and then the development side. So it's literally just scratching the surface of where you could go with it.
Absolutely. And look, as much as I'd love to be here selling a product for, you know, $1 million product to everybody on the podcast and plugging it in and telling everyone you wear this head device or whatever it might be, no, look, unfortunately, we haven't quite got there yet. But maybe next time on the show, I'll have something to plug. But yeah, exactly that. Look, it was a great piece of research. It was really widely kind of really nicely, I suppose, taken in, and there's been some brilliant feedback, and it was kind of a nice to get a win for the goalkeepers for once. So yeah, it was kind of it was a nice project, but yeah, looking forward to what's coming next.
This has been brilliant, Michael. I've really enjoyed. Actually enjoyed like reading a bit more about this and thinking a bit more about it for the podcast. So thanks so much for coming on, and we'll have to get you on again now and challenge us a little bit more on what we're doing.
Absolutely, Gary. Thanks a lot for having me on.